Just shot a video from someone who was adopted, and they were talking about finding their biological parents at age 50, and they just did a DNA test. What's funny is already today I was thinking, you know, I should make a video talking about how, especially as Americans, we have almost this sense of we're adopted. We don't really know where we came from. And I think that's very valid. I think most of us agree on this channel that Americans are more obsessed with finding out their DNA and heritage more so than any other country. America is obsessed with it. And there's got to be a psychological reason why. And I think ultimately it's kind of like we're adopted. So much of the rest of the world and their nations, things have been in place for a while. And even if you're, say, in England, but your DNA, you're actually of Indian descent, at least you know more about your story than most of us here in America. Because we're all just kind of mixed. Most of us are mostly European. Some of us are not. But it's like we're adopted children. And I think that's a good analogy. I'm not adopted myself, but I think it's part of our identity as Americans that we feel like we're adopted. And just like the video I had recently made to the woman who had said she's 50 and hasn't met her biological parents, I think there's definitely some undeniable undertones in that as Americans, we kind of feel that way. Even if you know good and well who your parents are, like for me, you've seen my parents, they've been in my videos. But all of us as Americans ultimately think, not so much, I wonder who my parents are, but instead we think, I wonder who my ancestors are. And so having the American perspective we have, we find out, oh, I'm a quarter Irish, I'm 10% Spanish, I'm 15% German. And we see those things in these tests, and we don't know or care that there's really no such thing as this race of people who are Irish or race of people who are French. It doesn't work that way. But in our minds, we've got such a lack of ethnic identity because we're such a stew, such a Heinz 57. We're so far removed from really understanding other than some kind of blurry European mix. That's all we really assume and know. It's kind of like we're adopted. I think that this really feeds into the psychology of why these DNA tests are such an important part of American culture. It's like we're adopted. How do you feel about that analogy? I think it's totally legitimate. As Americans, it's like we're adopted. We're not trying to find out our parents. We're trying to find out our whole family tree, because we've got more question marks, I would argue, than most people in most nations across the world. That's how we're such a young country. We're such a mixed country. And enough generations have passed where these stories haven't really been told. The fact that my mom took her test and it showed that she's 15.2% Sephardic Jewish. We had speculation that we might be part Jewish, but we never knew that for sure until she took the test. When what happened was that Jewish part of us, that history got cut off at some point. When her grandparents came here from Italy over 100 years ago, and apparently, they converted to Catholicism, and the marriage, it could have been an arranged marriage. That whole part we wouldn't have known. So by taking a DNA test, I can think, oh, I can't say that I'm a Jewish guy, but I'm part Jewish because my mom's part Jewish, and we wouldn't have known that for the DNA test. We get to find out almost in a sense like, okay, so it's not that I'm adopted, but man, I find out more about myself that I couldn't have known otherwise. How do you feel? Do you think that's accurate? Do you think it's safe to say that America, more so than any other nation in the world, we have this adopted complex? And that's why we want to understand more about our ethnic background. And therefore, we even put more into it than is even there. To say that somebody is 10% Irish, even though Irish isn't a race, or Scottish, you're 18%, as if it was its own race. We don't know, well, we don't care that it's not its own race. We're just so desperate to find out our ethnic background that we'll turn nations into their own race. So now suddenly, being Scottish is a race. And in American culture, oh yeah, I'm a third Irish. Irish isn't a race, it's not an ethnicity, it's a national origin. But in America, we're so desperate to find out who we are, we over-romanticize this concept. whereas other nations do not. I think that's why America's so obsessed with DNA tests, is because it's, in a sense, like we're adopted.